Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. DeAndrea Matthews, and let me turn this off. All right, can everyone hear me? I was having some technical difficulty. Oh, go away. There we go. All right, having some technical difficulty for whatever reason. My internet did not want me to go live this afternoon, but here I am. So thank you for your patience. It is a little after 5 o'clock, and 5 o'clock this week, all week long, I am going live to talk about the published professional writing a book to build your brand, which is my newest ebook. And actually, it's a book that I wrote in less than a week. So in 6 days, I outlined, wrote, edited, designed, and published the published professional. So we're looking at part one. And in part one, there are several major themes that we're going over this week. Day one, which was Monday, I talked about the 7 reasons to write your story. Yesterday was day 2, and we talked about the 10 questions that every nonfiction author should be able to answer about their book or the book that they're planning to write. Today is day 3, and I'm excited because today we talk about the 5 steps for crafting your story. Excuse me. So if you are thinking about writing a story, whether it is fiction or nonfiction, these are tips that can help you. I specialize in nonfiction. I love nonfiction books. I love helping authors to be able to bring their stories out of their head, out of their heart, and onto the paper. And I turn manuscripts into masterpieces. At Claire Alden Publications, which is my hybrid publishing company, we use a 5-pillar book production or book creation process. So those 5 pillars are book production, book design, book marketing, book publishing, and book distribution. So those are the 5 pillars that are used really to take a book from blank page all the way to being published. So having said all of that, for those of you who are new to my page or new to my live stream, I am DeAndrea Matthews. I'm an author, I'm a publisher, and an international speaker, in addition to wearing so many more hats. So however you met me, however you know me, go ahead and drop a hello in the comments so that I know you're watching, whether you're live or via the replay. So let's go ahead and get started with day 3, 5 steps for crafting your story. If you want to craft a story, if you want to write a manuscript, if you want to write a book, you're on the right page today. So number 1, first step for crafting your story is your main character's backstory. You need to examine what your main character's backstory is. And for those of you who are familiar with literary terms, the main character is the protagonist. So what is the protagonist's backstory? You need to know this before you really start writing the story out, because that's going to determine how everything flows from there, because the main character, of course, is the focus of your entire story. So you need to know who that main character is. For nonfiction, a lot of times you are the main character, but because you're so close to you, you forget about some things that other people need to know because they don't know you as well as you know yourself. So I use a character interview when I am looking at my main character, whether my main character is me and I'm telling a story in a memoir or autobiography, or if it's actually a separate main character from another type of story. And I actually have 2 types of character interviews. If you've never heard of a character interview, go ahead and drop it in the comments and let me know. I don't know how familiar that term is. Again, I've been using this for goodness, probably almost 10 years now. But I have a basic character interview, and I'll share a couple of those things. And then I have a more comprehensive character interview. But regardless of whether you use the basic character interview or the more comprehensive one, you'll want to know what your main character's backstory is. I'll just give you what the basic character interview says. And again, these are 10 emotional ways to explore your character's life. So of course you want to know what the name is, because you want to make sure that the name is consistent throughout your story. If your character's name is Alyssa, is Alyssa spelled with one S or two S's? You want to make sure that you are consistent throughout the manuscript. You can't have two S's in the beginning of the manuscript for Alyssa, and then towards the end, it's only one. So those are the types of things that you want to make sure you're consistent about. So what's the name of your main character? How old is the main character? Again, making sure that you're understanding the impact of different generations on their experiences and how that ties into the story overall and how the story is received by your readers. The next thing to think about is what has been their greatest moment of fear? If something happens in the future in the story, how are you going to be able to show and not tell what that fear is and why that character is having that response? What has been their moment of greatest courage? What has been their greatest joy, which is a little bit different than your greatest courage? Courage is something that you need in order to achieve something and to, again, kind of push forward and to accomplish something that you want to do. Joy is a little bit different because you can get joy from, again, looking at the baby picture of your neighbor's newest grandchild or something like that. Also, the moment of their greatest sorrow. What is it that really hurt their heart? What is it in their past that really, caused them to be sorrowful? How does that impact what they're going through today? Does what they're going through today in the story remind them of that greatest sorrow? Those are ways that you can tie in these experiences. And again, you want to show, not tell. Don't just tell what they went through, show it. Let your readers become immersed in that experience so they're right there with the character, because that will make them want to continue to read the story. Again, something to think about is their worst failure. What has been the worst failure in their life? What is that thing that they may or may not want anyone to know about? What is that deep, dark secret they want to, again, keep hidden? Which ties into the next question in this basic character interview. What is their moment of deepest shame? Something else to think about is what has caused them profound guilt? And then finally, what is that moment of their most redemptive forgiveness? What is it that they hold dear to their heart because they were able to move past that point? So these are just, again, 10 emotional things to consider as you're exploring your character's life. And that's part of the basic character interview. Now, if you want to get more in depth as we're looking at this backstory and what it is that you can figure out about your character, you can look at things from who raised them, whether they were raised by a single parent, both parents, grandparents. Do they have any siblings? What was their socioeconomic status growing up? What's their ethnic background? What were the places they lived? Were they a military brat? Did they hop around all the time? What was their favorite subject in school? Where do they travel? All types of things come out in the character interview. So whether they have children or not, again, their physical appearance is something that typically comes out very easily in the story. Do they have any specific characteristics that should be pointed out? One of the things that I like to look at, and again, this character interview is pretty comprehensive. It's about 6 pages, so I'm not going to read through all of this. But one of the things that I like to think about when I am interviewing my characters, if we'll say it like that, is what is the one thing that they always have in the refrigerator? If you think about the one thing that your main character, whether it's you or someone else, always has in their refrigerator, that's one of those fun facts that I love. Like my best friend probably always has a Pepsi in the refrigerator. So things like that make a difference as you're building that backstory and as you're drawing people in to your main character. So step 1 in crafting your story is really looking at that main character's backstory. Number 2 for the 5 steps of crafting your story is, what is the inciting incident? And when I say inciting incident, what I'm talking about is, what is that thing that has now happened that draws you into the story? And again, I'm a firm believer that you should have that inciting incident within the first 3 pages of your manuscript. Do not start with the backstory. Even though we start talking about the backstory you'll want to know about your character before you begin to really draw people in. But that inciting incident should really happen within the first 3 pages to grab your reader's attention and make them want to continue reading. For most people, if you pick up that book, sometimes it's within the first 3 lines that they get your attention and you want to keep reading or put it down, or sometimes it's within the first 3 pages. After 3 pages, if you don't have my attention, you go on my to be read pile and you may never be resurrected from there. So that introduction to your story, what is it that you're going to show or shift to the beginning of the story so that you draw people in? So that inciting incident, what has now happened? What are we walking into? And really that lets us know the problem that needs needs to be solved, or again, whatever's going on with the character that they have to work through in order to get to the end of their journey, which would be the end of your story. Number three in the 5 steps to crafting your story is for you to plot the series of challenges. So, if you're working on an autobiography, for example, what are the series of challenges that you have now gone through in your life? And how do you plot that out so you tell it in a succinct way so that people are drawn to the story and again want to continue reading to see how this has now been resolved? It could be in chronological order, but it doesn't have to be. It could be in order of severity because, again, you're starting with this inciting incident, you're drawing people in, you might be taking them backwards on a timeline to where you really begin to feel this way as a young person or whatever is going on in the story. So, what are these personal anecdotes if you're writing an autobiography? What are these series of challenges that you've now overcome, or you had to come to a decision and make a choice one way or the other? So, you're really kind of going up and down and up and down and up and down until you get to number 4, which I'll share with you in just a moment. So this is really where the bulk of the message is in your story. This is the body of the manuscript, and this is where a lot of the details go. So all of these details, again, the plot of the challenges that you're experiencing, the decisions that you're making in the story, all of this goes in the body. And this is number 3 in crafting your story. So number 4 is the climax. Of course, number 3 was really those series of challenges, the decisions you're making. And again, each decision leads you either in one direction or the other. But when you get to that climax is really that defining moment in your story. When you have that defining moment in your story, you want to make sure that the character at least pauses for a reflection. Was this a good choice? Was this a bad choice? Did I make the right choice? How do you draw the readers in so that they're right there with you, like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Or whatever it is that's going on with the climax. You want them to be right there with you in that moment. And you want to be able to tell your story in a way that makes that happen. And then number 5 of the 5 steps for crafting your story is the wrap up. We can't forget a good conclusion. It's kind of like watching a movie and you're like, that didn't answer my questions. What just happened here? You don't want people to have that type of feeling once they finish your story. So you want to wrap up all your loose ends. So any characters that have been introduced, you want to tell what's going on with them, what happened to them. It's kind of like at the end of a story, the picture has now gone off, but you have maybe 2 or 3 lines to tell you about each character as the screen is kind of winding down before it goes completely blank. So, okay, what happened with Pedro? What happened with Ray Ray? What happened with Maria? You know, all the characters that you've introduced in the story, the wrap up really kind of ties up all these loose ends so your reader is not left wondering what just happened. Now, the exception to this rule could be if you want to do a sequel, and there's a way to do a sequel, a good way. There's also a way to do it a bad way, but we're not going to talk about that. But as you're wrapping things up, you can wrap up the story, the current story that you just finished telling. You can wrap it up and still have people looking forward to what's going to happen next. We've seen that in some good movies, and I'm a big X-Men fan. So if you've seen any of the X-Men series, you know that they do a really good job at the end of the movie where they kind of leave you knowing, okay, it's going to be a follow-up, it's going to be another movie, and I think this is going to happen. And that's what you really want with that sequel. You want to wrap up the current storyline that you're telling, but you also want to keep people looking forward to what is coming next from this author who is you. So those are the 5 steps for crafting your story. Again, pretty simple, but I'll go over them again just in case you missed it. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and type in #replay in the comments so that I know that you're right here watching along with me this week as I go through the different chapters in the Published Professional. If you don't have your copy of the Published Professional, it's only $4.99 as an ebook. It's available on Amazon and other online retailers. So make sure you go and grab your copy. Not available as a paperback yet. So sorry. It's not going to be available as a paperback for a little while because I'm actually working on parts 2 and 3, and I'm going to combine it all together before I release it in paperback form. I'm also going to be working on a workbook because so many people need to be able to write down their thoughts as they're reading through this content so that they're working out their own story, working out their own manuscript as I'm giving all these gems. So again, the 5 steps for crafting your story. Number 1, what is your main character's backstory? You want to again do whether it's a basic character interview or a more comprehensive character interview. You want to know your character inside and out so that as you're telling the story, you can kind of plot and plan what the character is going to do and how they're going to respond and how you can show and not tell the various aspects of their life. Number 2, what is your inciting incident? Again, this inciting incident or inciting event should be told within the first 3 pages of your story so that you're drawing people in and they want to continue to read. This is really the introduction into what's going on. And then that's followed by number 3, which is the body of your manuscript. And that's really where you plot the series of challenges, the series of decisions that the protagonist, who is your main character, goes through in order to reach the ultimate end and finalize whatever is going on in the story. So number 4 is the climax. Again, at the peak of the story, you want to have this climax where there's this decision or this determination that really is a pivotal point in the main character's life. And they could either go in one direction or the other direction. And then finally, number 5 is the wrap up or the conclusion. You can have a good conclusion. You could have a disastrous or catastrophic conclusion. And you could also have somewhat of an ambiguous ending in your conclusion. Whatever you decide to do, just make sure that you are crafting it well so that people know exactly what happened. And in that afterglow, if you would, you're wrapping up all your loose ends. You're telling what happened with all of the characters, and your readers know exactly what has gone on. And they are either cheering for the protagonist or whatever it is that the goal of the story is. And if you don't know what the goal of the story is, make sure you go back and watch yesterday's live stream on 10 questions for every nonfiction author. So that's all I have for today. We just finished talking about the 5 steps for crafting your story. Tomorrow's live stream, which will be at 5 p.m., you can join me either on my Dr. DC Matthews author page on Facebook or the Claire Alden Publications YouTube page. Tomorrow, we will be talking about the 10-level customer pathway. So slightly different from talking about the story itself. The 10-level customer pathway really looks more so at book promotions and or book marketing, because it talks about how we can use, again, these social media followers that we're building up on the various platforms that we're on and take them from being a follower all the way to being a brand evangelist. So I am looking forward to sharing all of that knowledge. Thank you for your comment, Denise. I'm so excited that you can't wait to hear it and to learn it all. So that's wonderful. So tomorrow, the 10-level customer pathway, I'm looking forward to talking about that a little bit more. So be sure to join me. I am so excited about the works that will come out of everyone who's been paying attention and watching the live stream. So if you have questions or comments, make sure that you drop them in the comment box. I'm happy to answer your questions. So I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. as we discuss the 10-level customer pathway. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.